Hi there, I'm Aly Elliott.
Hi everybody, I'm Aly Elliott. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Welcome back to the Hiraeth series, the stories behind the images of the Bereaved Siblings Project. And today we're going to talk about Boone and his photograph, and I'm going to pull it up here so that I can see it too. The way that I met Boone's mom was different than a lot of the stories that I've told regarding the Miss families and the children whose stories I kind of knew already because I knew their families. And Boone's story is a little bit different. I actually, as Hiraeth, before it even had a name, it was growing in knowledge among the bereavement community and among my own personal community. People were interested in the work that I was doing and looking for it to come to completion and just kind of following along in the stories, which I greatly appreciate. Partly because as I developed concepts for it, some of them didn't have families. Some of them I just had a story that I wanted to tell and I didn't know whose it was yet. And some of them were purely geographical, whose family fit the story and could get to where I could get to them. And this is kind of one of these. Boone's family were friends of a friend. It was actually a friend that I went to high school with, and I had only seen her once since high school, and she let me use her horses in a different photo project. But we kept in touch on social media. And when I was looking for a family near the area of my hometown, she had a family that was Boone's family that was in the general area. And she knew his story and sent my information to Boone's mom, and we connected that way. And that's when I got to learn about the beautiful blonde Boone and his precious siblings and how adorable they are. And they met. We actually photographed this at my sister's house. This is one of the few images that I did not green screen. We were actually right there. However, it is heavily composited. We pieced together probably, and by we, that's just me. This part's just me. I pieced together probably in the ballpark of 30 or more images for this one final image, because I had a really heavily developed concept in my brain that I wanted to bring to life for this story, and Boone's story fit beautifully. And this was shot on my sister's porch. I didn't initially plan for it to be a Christmas image, but that's when we could get together. And their house was already decorated for Christmas, and I thought it just added this kind of whimsical glow, almost like a starry night. So we left that and we gave the lights a glow. This was shot on an overcast afternoon. It was cold, and I think it took 10-15 minutes. It was a really quick session. The wind chimes that appear in the image were not right there. They were close by, and they were actually from the funeral of my mother. And like I mentioned, this was my sister's porch, and she had those hung up outside her home, and they had the lyrics to Amazing Grace on them, and I found that so appropriate to be a part of this image in this series. And I wanted light to be the theme here. So we've got the twinkle lights of Christmas and the porch light, and I wanted it to be warm and cozy and homey. I wanted it to feel like home. And so we've got the glow of the inside of the home and the twinkle lights and the porch light. And because it was overcast, that actually worked out really nicely, because it was easier to play with the light on the kids and on the scene in general, because there wasn't a lot of strong directional lighting that I'd have to fight against shadows and that kind of thing, just from a technician's standpoint. We deliberately turned the chairs one kind of facing away, and all three of the siblings in another together. And my struggle here was to try to make sure that I was portraying that it was a reflection of him sitting on the porch rather than a child inside the window. So that took a lot of doubling and fading out, and a lot of Photoshop work really on his reflection. And I love how it came out so painterly, with him playing with the wind chimes and the movement created in the wind chimes, and the siblings' acknowledgement of him without him being in the physical aspect of the forefront of the image. You'll see in the lower left-hand side, Boone's symbol is a frog. And as long as I live, when I see a frog now, I will forever think of Boone. And his mama talked about how they don't go on a family trip without seeing a frog. That's just his hello to them. And I like that it was something a little different. I was initially going to try to put a real frog in there. And like I mentioned, it was wintertime when I was shooting this, when I was piecing this together. We didn't have a lot of time. This was actually in the 9 months or so before it opened. It's one of the last images that I shot. And we just didn't have time to wait for, a real frog. But that didn't occur to me. I mean, I knew that, but I thought, we'll make it work. Whatever, we can figure it out. If I do have frogs in zoos, I don't know. But I was willing to look for it. So I posted on Facebook, does anybody know where an impatient woman could go to photograph some frogs? And without really knowing why, and in all fairness, I have a lot of weird requests like that for different composites and different work that I'm doing. So I feel like my friends and family are a little bit used to my out of left field requests. But I got 3 separate people responding with frog statues. And I thought that was just perfect, because that's a real life tangible thing that we can purposely put somewhere. And I did not have that idea when I shot this. In fact, I don't think I knew that detail of their story until after we shot it, which I don't think it would have mattered, because I wouldn't have had that idea to do a little statue. But it worked out so beautifully, because I had a few friends that had little statues, and this one just was perfect, and I could manipulate the light on it, and he sits in there so subtly that you might not notice unless you were looking for him. And of course, Boone's family is always looking for him in that symbol. So there he is, kind of tucked into the corner, which I really, really like. The composition of the entire image, this one was more hard lines and repetition as far as artistically. So it was something, as I composited the angles and the lines, I had to be very aware of that as being a different element from a lot of the other images. But it was a really fun part to take on, and very meticulous, and it really tested my OCD tendencies. But it's also one of my favorites. I absolutely love it. I love the juxtaposition of the soft lights and the warm lights, and then the hard edges of lines, and a lot of different line patterns. And because I unfortunately shot it a little bit crooked, I made it harder on myself than necessary. But as are things in life, the harder things are usually the bigger payouts. So it was a tremendous pleasure to work on this image and to get to know Boone and his family. And I will read now what his mother wrote. This was displayed with his image at the opening. I mainly want people to love who you have while you have them. Tomorrow is never promised. Boone was a happy, healthy boy. We spent his last earthly day playing outside and cuddling. Never would I have thought this is how our lives would have turned out, but God knew, and he has gotten us this far. Psalm chapter 147 verse 3 says, he heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds, and that is what he has done for our family. Daily we think of our boy, and we are so thankful for the good memories. And as long as I live, when I see a frog, I will think of Boone and his story. And I hope that we carry his story through a little bit more through frogs and through his photograph. And I'm so grateful to Boone's family for being a part of this project. And we'll continue the story behind the images, probably not tomorrow, but in the next couple of days. And next up, I'm going right in line with the book. Here's the book. Whoops, I dropped it stuff. The next one up is Abigail. And that's another, and I every time I look at one, I'm like, oh, that's one of my favorites. And I'm excited to tell the story. And I'm so thankful that it worked out. So many of these were spread out all over the country, and it was questionable whether or not we were going to be able to make it work schedule-wise. And some families went so far above and beyond to make it happen, and I'm so very grateful. And we had so many more that wanted to and just couldn't. And it was just meant to be that these 20 were the 20 that it was Hiraeth's moment to tell. And I'm so very grateful. And I'm grateful to everybody who's following along and hearing these stories and allowing these children a little more life tangibly. So thank you so much for following along, and we'll be back soon. Have a good one.
That's why you my mommy. Please.